And of course, it's fully inclusive. That's the thing. I mean, and that's the way of things these days. It's becoming more and more. I mean, it's open bar, champagne flows, caviar is served, all meals are included. Water sports are included, of course. I mean, good point that you made. I mean, you when you go on a Sea Dream cruise, you tend to take that for granted, but you're absolutely right. I know how expensive it is. You know, if you, I mean, if I think how much it would have cost me for my son to be on a jet ski and on a banana boat and riding in a Zodiac for 4 days. I mean, that that would be hundreds and hundreds of pounds, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would. So that all happens. So that's the experience on board. But I mean, the real key, apart from all of that, for Sea Dream, is then the ports of call. You know, which we touched upon, and it's beaches, and it's, for example, another one. It's just the ability, I think, to get into these really, really small ports where other ships go. And sorry, the example I was going to make is we have one ship in northern waters in the Baltic next year, which might not sound to people the right thing to do, but if you can imagine sailing into St. Petersburg, we tie up right round that bend in the river, right alongside the Hermitage Museum. So you step down and you walk up the steps to the Hermitage.
Rather than parking in the old military.
Yes, that's
dock
right. Yeah.
Where you have to go.
Well, there's a particular bend in the river, I think, that the big ships can't get round.
Yeah,
I understand. I've not been there, but so it's not just a sunshine thing, and there's some, you know, some of the other Baltic itineraries. There's some of the Swedish archipelago. You know, we're going to particular islands that just other ships don't go to. I mean, not even other small competitor lines. We just go to these places because we can get to them and tie up on a jetty and disembark, have a great experience on that island, and then disappear again onto the next port. So that really, really does make the massive difference, because it's not just about, as you said earlier, I think, it's not just about the small port being, oh, it's great, it's a small port. You're the only people there often. That's the real key.
The experience is more authentic. You're getting a proper slice of local life. You're seeing something which is not being witnessed by everyone else, which makes it exclusive and makes it private and makes it personal and it makes it special.
It does.
And that's the thing. I mean, you know, worldwide travel now is you know, thankfully we all have the ability to travel around the world to these places, whereas that just used to be for the select few.
Yeah.
So then trying to find a
something
niche
exclusive.
within that, something exclusive, and that's what you're offering.
I think it is, yeah, and I think it's just important that the luxury thing is part of it. It's a massive part of it, and this informal luxury that we talk about, that is Sea Dream, is very important. But this itinerary, even just on what I call the standard Greek island one that I was on, you know, there was those two magical experiences where you just did something completely different that you just can't do on ships even 3 times that size, let alone bigger. And again, we were in Santorini, for example. Everybody has to do Santorini.
Absolutely.
And instead of, and when we were in Santorini, we were anchored, and there were 4 or 5 other big sort
ships.
of regular premium ships in. And again, we just arranged, because there's only 112 guests, instead of taking the tender to the bottom of the cable cars,
for Thera,
right, we had a tender that we arranged that took everybody who wanted to go ashore round the corner to a very tiny little port on the end of the island. So we gave people a commentary on the way, all the way around the island.
Around the cauldron.
Exactly, around the cauldron. And we had a bus waiting that just drove people up into Santorini. But it was also timed that we had worked out when the other big ships were leaving, if you're with me. Right. So by the time our guests got to the top of Santorini, most of the other people had done their donkey ride down or their cable car back, and Santorini opened up and became this very cute Greek place that, of course, it was once.
Yeah.
And so even when you do what I would call a mainstream port, I mean, there's nothing mainstream about Santorini, but when there's 5,000 people there,
of course,
it becomes quite mainstream. So even though there's mainstream ports, we try and make it special and exclusive in a different way. And by the time we came back down the mountain, all the other ships had gone. So there was just the little Sea Dream one sat in the cauldron, and we got back on board and we slowly sailed away. And
which must be spectacular. It's the largest volcanic, cauldron in the
I
world.
believe.
And I believe personally that the site of velocity of Atlantis has a strong.
We talked about that.
This, yeah.
Yes.
And it's
an amazing, it's a magical place, isn't it?
It's a magical, but particularly when you're on a. I just think it's great because I'd love the sense of going around the fjords on a on a Sea Dream ship.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I think it would be they'd look even bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're on a small,
and we get closer. That's the other thing. We can get closer and manoeuvre into places where the big ships just can't go. I mean that is really special actually. And there's lots of stories about ports. I mean, we've got a cruise next year when the ship comes back out of the Baltic and sails south, all the way from Dover actually, all the way down to Lisbon, which doesn't sound like a particularly exciting cruise because you and I know that we're positioning the ship, but because of her size, we sail up the Loire, for example, up the Loire River, and we get to, forgive me, I can't remember instantly where we stop, but that's kind of my point, that they're small places.
Absolutely.
And the whole experience is about wine, so that becomes a wine cruise, and there'll be an excursion to a vineyard. And we get right up the river as well because we can. And then there's another place that we stop on the way down where it's a just complete exclusive port that nobody else calls to. So rather than just saying, well, join us on a Dover to Lisbon cruise, and that itinerary is selling really well because nobody else can offer it, you see.
Well, absolutely.
And that's the great thing.
And you can pull, a Sun Dream 1 or 2 up into a standard harbour almost, can't you? You don't need
completely. Yeah.